All right, you guys. Um, the noise this morning, maybe it's every morning, of trucks and air conditioners and then people has been pretty high. So on my last video, I had my voice, I think, too loud. I'll try to do better this time. I want to just give you some thoughts on MMTLP. This is not going to be a complete concept video, but I'm walking my dog, who has had a pretty good recovery. I hope that means I have more time with him. But anyway, there's just two or three things I just want to point out. The battle is tough right now. I don't know who to trust on all the space calls and in other situations. 98% of us, you, are working hard, dedicated. You have the best of intentions, but, or you want to cross? I don't know why. But we have to face it. This is a lot of money involved in this. And there are shills, there are liars, there are professors, there are so-called journalists, there are articles that are not worth the paper they're on, and there's reports from Congress and letters to Congress from the criminals. So and then we start turning on each other a little bit too, because it's so tension filled. So that's why I'm trying to put this video out. In particular, I'd like to, off the bat, give my full support to Anna, Queen of Trades. I think she's come under attack because of how good she is, and the fact that she's fighting the fight effectively. And they don't want effectiveness. They don't want the message to get across. And I know a little bit. I know how difficult it is. The energy sink that doing this can be, putting yourself out there, and the attacks can really drain. So if you have a chance, put Anna in your thoughts and prayers. I also, speaking of prayers, would like everyone to perhaps, if you're of that mindset, to say a prayer for Jenny Lefkovich, Jenny L. She's terrific. She's been working hard. She has given so much to our communities, but also to families and children for years. And I just say a prayer for her health. And good morning, sister. For her family and for her courage. She'll be okay, but it's a time that she needs some support. Okay, so on MMTLP, this is a bad example for political reasons, but it's a good example for what I want to make. What the criminals are doing is they have an organized attack on all stocks, particularly in the small caps and micro caps. They do it in all stocks, but they do it with these companies that they can destroy. And I've taken to calling these counterfeit, phantom, illegal, fail to locate, fail to deliver, inadvertent, we're gonna take care of it. The trading was so fast, we couldn't locate shares, but my client wanted me to sell so many shares, and I just had to take the order, and he's always good for it. Shares. I just call them Gensler shares. These are the frauds. These Gensler shares are rampant or what's a better word? They are everywhere, just a small word, everywhere in the U.S. markets, but they particularly hurt small companies and medium-sized companies. If you think, as the press and Congress and Jim Cramer are trying to, and this professor from Georgetown are trying to convince Congress that this is a one-off in MMTLP, you're wrong. What makes it a one-off is this is when the system got caught. Here's what basically happened. Torchlight had a great geologist, a great team, and a great leader. They started with funding from friends and family and their own funding, and maybe an angel round or two, and then they went to the markets. That was their mistake, going to Gary Gensler's over-the-counter markets that he couldn't care less about. The criminal sale of Gensler shares in Torchlight commenced immediately, probably before the over-the-counter deal was done, the IPO, or whatever format it was. So the criminals slaughtered Torchlight. And I don't know how many shares, but probably hundreds of millions of shares of Torchlight were sold, and it destroyed. I was invested in it, and I had clients in it. It destroyed Torchlight, and it destroyed Torchlight's ability to raise money. But that is okay with the modern SEC. Why? Because it helps Goldman Sachs and the rest of these investment banks and hedge funds. Remember, if it's good for Goldman Sachs, it's not illegal. So John Berta, the CEO, was faced with a situation. What do I do? And he realized he had two assets left. I mean, he had his oil and gas assets, but he couldn't finance them. So he had two assets left, a large short position, and I don't know that he was fully aware of the power of that short position, who was at that time. And the other asset he had was his shell, his trading vehicle, Torchlight. So I hate that word, but he monetized that on behalf of shareholders. He got the most value he could on behalf of shareholders by doing a reverse merger with MMAT, Meta Materials, which is a terrific company on its own. A company with technologies you won't believe. One of the technologies is they have a diaphragm or a membrane that they can put in batteries for electric vehicles that prevents explosions, fires in batteries. But hey, in Gensler's world, that needs to be shorted to oblivion, because the geniuses at Goldman Sachs and elsewhere deserve to make money, and new technologies have to die on the vine, maybe to be scooped up by China or other opportunistic countries that do not allow this criminality. Okay, then what happened there? The shorts were faced with a position, as they are in all of the stocks they destroy. Oh my gosh, it's moving over to MMAT. What do we do? What do we do? Well, the system long ago got rid of paper certificates in general, made it too expensive and cumbersome. So what's in your accounts, what's in my accounts, are electronic entries. And if you get out of the system, it's nearly impossible to get back in a timely fashion or cheaply or inexpensively. So in the accounts are fail to locate, which is illegal, fail to deliver, which is illegal, fail to close out, which is illegal, security fraud on a scale that is unimaginable, as the investment bankers try to emulate or replicate the fractional reserve banking system on the commercial side. They expand their assets under management. They expand the assets they can short. They expand the assets they lend out. They expand the assets they can earn fees on, which is, I guess, the same as under management. They expand their commissions without doing anything, except allowing Gensler shares to be sold to you and to me. Shares that don't exist, that are fraudulent. Okay, so what happened? Torchlight gave its listing, its shell, its I can't remember if it was NASDAQ or not, but basically gave its trading vehicle to MMAT, and that was to the benefit of all shareholders, and it's a great company. The massive Gensler share positions in Torchlight under FINRA, under SEC, and I think illegally by your broker-dealers, were just carried over into MMAT as it started trading. Well, then the shorts, criminals, all of them, started shorting MMAT. Oh, come on, they're going to need money. We have an opportunity to profit from this. They're underfunded. Their CEO's a scientist. He doesn't know anything about running a company. And we, the geniuses on Wall Street, we can strip the market cap, not only of Torchlight, we can strip the market cap of MMAT for our benefit, and we're protected because the Goldman Sachs and others has captured the regulatory environment, and they've in fact bought the Democratic Party and a large swaths of the Republican Party as well. So the shorts, in a criminal fashion with your broker-dealers, the short started destroying MMAT by selling hundreds of millions of Gensler shares in MMAT. Shares that just do not exist, they're all fraudulent. So now you had the accumulated Gensler shares of Torchlight as an open, unsettled position, and you had now the MMAT Gensler shares all unsettled. The problem is settlement, and the issue in MMTLP is more shares were sold than exist, and the prime brokers accept it. Gensler loves it because it's good for Goldman Sachs prime brokerage, and your broker-dealers allow it for all of their own reasons. So an interesting wrinkle occurred. There's no way, and I just forgot the CEO's name, I'm sorry to be rude, I should remember, but there's no way the CEO of MMAT knows anything about a virgin field prospective for oil and gas in the noise, the horror. But there's no way that the CEO of MMAT could develop a oil and gas property. So what he did, and what the main shareholders did, is once you notice the noise, it just doesn't stop. um, they ring-fenced the assets of the Oro Grande and the Hazel, and I think there was one piece up in Oklahoma, and they distributed it one for one to shareholders of MMAT as a partnership. So it was called Metamaterials Torchlight Partners or something like that. Well, this was always meant to be a private, a non-trading vehicle, and it was always meant to represent what would be a private company. Well, what happens to the shorts with all these Gensler shares? All of a sudden, the system is putting by accident, what Ham always talks about, that you have to do special dividends. This was a special dividend writ large, and there was no way that the criminals could deliver these physical, privately, non-trading Metamaterials Torchlight partners for each of the Gensler shares that they had counterfeited. Oh, you keep saying counterfeit. Why do you think? That's hard to do that. This is what someone was telling me last night. Well, it's not hard if you set up your shop in Germany or in Canada, and if you have fronts like the Lynn Partners or Power Up Lending, sucker punching the CEOs, and then you have captured regulators. It's not hard. And market makers that look the other way, and market makers that don't actually market make. So anyway, what happened here is all of a sudden the ability to kick the can down the road from Torchlight to MMAT stopped, or it was interrupted. They were kicking the can, and suddenly it's filled with sort of wet concrete, and it's hard to kick. So they said, we got to do something here. So what they did is they fraudulently, and I can't even begin to tell you the laws that are broken, but they took people's identities, they took corporate identities, they set up maybe selling one share out of Germany, and then that opens the floodgates under the Gensler regime, and they got MMTLP symbol to trade. And all of a sudden, this dormant stub distribution started trading. So that can with a little wet concrete in it, they were able to drain out the concrete and start kicking it down the road again. So what the criminals did on a massive scale is they started selling Gensler shares in MMTLP. And they did it on a huge level. Well, MMAT, as always planned, filed to distribute the MMTLP to its shareholders as a private company, as shares in a private company. Well, the criminals who were now kicking the can down the road by selling MMTLP, and you may ask, well, how could they? Well, they got the symbol trading, and because the United States financial system is set up for fraud. It is set up so that Goldman Sachs, Ken Griffin, SAC can do this or they're, this is all my opinion, and maybe it's somebody like them. They can sell endless amount of Gensler shares because everything is electronic. And MMTLP was trading electronically. The entries in your statements and my statements, electronic. And as long as your statement comes home to you in black and white, you say, hey, I've got money. Well, you don't. You've got Gensler shares. But there's no way to distinguish between real shares and Gensler shares. So MMAT, the company, by filing to distribute these shares, which we're trading, they filed with the SEC. The SEC approved it. They didn't give much time to FINRA, but FINRA is just a stepchild of the SEC. That shouldn't have been a problem. The SEC approved it. They approved the last trading date, and FINRA rubber stamped it. Well, all of a sudden, that can that was empty of concrete becomes not only full of settled, firm concrete, but it's bolted to the floor. And when the shorts started trying to kick that, they couldn't kick it anywhere. So they pulled out their levers of power, and and simultaneously, broker dealers, a lot of people at the broker dealers don't understand what's going on. They start calling FINRA. We can't settle we can't settle all these undelivered shares, these failed to delivers, failed to locate, fail to reconcile, fail to settle. It's hundreds of millions of Gensler shares. So they call into FINRA, and FINRA, a lawyer there, panics and just stops trading. Well, everyone on this call is going to say, well, we missed out on a short squeeze. Well, yes, that is possible, and certainly I think would have happened. And let me just say something on that. I saw that people are blaming Terry Yonkers and YouTubers, and maybe that's me, for investors getting in the stock. How the heck would investors know to look beyond an SEC approval or a FINRA approval of trading, and a well-delineated last day to trade to receive the dividend is Thursday, and there's Friday and Monday, and then it stops trading? That was approved. You're saying retail investors have to caveat emptor on the regulatory bodies? This makes a mockery of the United States security system. When Terry Yonkers noticed, after doing a lot of due diligence, and I'm just assuming he did this because of the posts I've read, he noticed that over years, the supply and demand balance of shares in Torchlight, then MMAT, and then MMTLP had been distorted by potentially hundreds of millions, if not 1 or 2 billion. Gensler shares, which don't exist. They're sold in fraudulent ways, and they're allowed to remain on the electronic books because nobody either has the authority or awareness, or nobody has the courage to stand up to the system. Everyone has to get their children through college. So anyway, they couldn't kick the can anymore. It was bolted to the ground and full of concrete. They were breaking their toes. So they put pressure on FINRA probably, and FINRA probably got pressure from 100 broker dealers that you got to give us guidance here. We can't settle these trades in time. They stopped trading. Well, now it's almost tiresome. It's so predictable. The criminals have paid Professor Angel at Georgetown to give up his integrity and go to Congress and mislead Congress. Certain Congress women and men and senators are captured by Goldman Sachs in the street, and that's our financing system for elections. And maybe they are receptive to these deceptive messages. Jim Cramer goes on TV and says, "Oh, it's caveat emptor." He ran a hedge fund, and you can find videos where he brags about doing these kind of things. Then you get articles out that are anti MMTLP, and then the most galling is they're saying that John Berta and the insiders committed fraud. Bull crap. It's so unfair. They have no shame. They will destroy reputations. They will destroy companies, cities, America, all for their money. And they don't pay taxes on this. Why the hell is Congress protecting this behavior? Why do people that I know say, "Oh, well, maybe that's legal"? I mean, that little, of course they're a market maker and they couldn't find the shares and their client wanted to sell the shares and you would take the order. They always deliver in the future. Why do we enable this behavior? What I suggest everyone does, if anyone listens to this, is you look at the totality. Don't break it down in these small parts. Look at the totality of the behavior. It is a criminal organization. It spans continents. It spans parties. It spans brokerage firms and hedge funds. And it's worth trillions with a T. Trillions in illegal profits, which they don't pay taxes on. And we all defend it. Why are we defending it? So I just want to end this before it gets too long. Everyone is turning on each other. They're blaming the YouTubers now. They went through and said, "Hey, it wasn't me," and then they blame it on FINRA. Then they blame it on that's not going to work. Then they blame it on that the insiders committed fraud. Then they're going to blame it on YouTubers, predictable. Then they're going to call us Bernie brothers. Then they're going to say that we were greedy. Well, what about their greed? For years, they distorted the markets for their greed, and they don't pay taxes on it. And they did it in a massive, massive way. And when some smart people noticed the discrepancy, all of a sudden, wham, 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 mommy, they're hurting us. And the FINRA shuts down trading? Come on. This isn't an issue just for MMTLP. This is the strength of the United States. And the United States you're going to leave for your children and grandchildren. Well, now what they'll do, they'll say, well, the trade shouldn't have happened, even though SEC and FINRA approved them. So we're not going to do anything. That won't work. Then they'll say, well, just return everyone's money. Well, actually, there'll be one step before that. They'll say only the people that bought Torchlight get the dividend. But that's not going to work. Then they'll say just return everybody's, just reverse the trades. And that won't work. Then they'll say, well, we're only going to pay the $2.98 where the stock was fraudulently closed. That won't work. Then they'll say, well, let's just put out an offer at $8 and see how many people take it. That might start working. But there has to be a settlement. Right now it's going through the legal process for a settlement. But I think there will be a financial settlement. But I guess my reason for doing this video, and I'll try to do a more thoughtful explanation again of the way I think this should settle out. So I'm going to finish on 2 points. One, MMTLP is not a one-off. MMTLP is, by accident, the exemplar of what is going on in our financial markets. And if Congress doesn't want to fix it, shame on them. And if Gary Gensler continues to collude with the criminals, shame on him. But regardless of your thoughts, if it continues, our financial system will collapse. And the wealth that you think you have will be gone. This is not an issue of a bunch of Bernie bros or Reddit brothers or Russians sitting in their computers. This is fraud on such a massive scale, you would think somebody's at war with us. Okay, my second point, my last point, I already forgot it. Let me think. I can't remember my last point. Life in the fast lane. I just want to say, though, that we have to stick together. We will win here. This fighting is a sign of their weakness. I think there will be a settlement. Oh, I know what it was. The movement of shares that are happening now to AST leads me to believe, and I want to end it on a hopeful note, leads me to believe somebody in the back rooms have made an agreement to solve this. And they're going to do it quietly, without damage to reputations, without damage to, unfortunately, to the criminals who were the clients of Wall Street. They are the clients of Wall Street. So I think there might be a little hope that once this movement of shares finishes, that there'll be a settlement. So that's what I wanted to end it on, a little bit of hope. This is a nice little coffee shop in the morning. At night it's drinking. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That's on MMTLP. I think I'll do a video. What did I do this morning? Finger. I might do one on logic next and then call it quits this morning. I hope everyone has a nice day, and thanks for listening.